Good morning. I'm Craig, and this is Marauder's Mike. This morning I'm reading Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Chapter 6, The Portkey, straight through. I do slow, trauma informed readings of fiction, pausing to notice what's happening beneath the surface: fear, attachment, defenses, and meaning. This isn't recap or fandom theory. I'm interested in why certain stories stay with us and what they tell us about being human. I engage with comments as we go, and I'll leave a little space at the end for conversation. Some of this material can be confronting, so take it at whatever pace works for you. Let's begin. Chapter 6, The Portkey. Harry felt as though he had barely lain down to sleep in Ron's room when he was being shaken awake by Mrs. Weasley. "Time to go, Harry dear," she whispered, moving away to wake Ron. Harry felt for his glasses, put them on, and sat up. It was still dark outside. Ron muttered indistinctly as his mother roused him. At the foot of Harry's mattress, he saw two large, disheveled shapes emerging from tangles of blankets. "'S time already," said Fred groggily. They dressed in silence, too sleepy to talk. Then, yawning and stretching, the four of them headed downstairs into the kitchen. Mrs. Weasley was stirring the contents of a large pot on the stove, while Mr. Weasley was sitting at the table, checking a sheaf of large parchment tickets. He looked up as the boys entered and spread his arms so that they could see his clothes more clearly. He was wearing what appeared to be a golfing jumper and a very old pair of jeans, slightly too big for him and held up with a thick leather belt. "What do you think?" he asked anxiously. "We're supposed to go incognito. Do I look like a muggle, Harry?" I love that the wizards are so disconnected from the muggle world that Arthur doesn't even know how to muggle properly. Good morning. And good morning. "Yes," said Harry, smiling. "Very good." "Where are Bill and Charlie and Percy?" said George, failing to stifle a huge yawn. "Well, they're apparating, aren't they?" said Mrs. Weasley, heaving a large pot over to the table and starting to ladle porridge into bowls. Now, we've seen the movies, but I think this is the first time that we're really starting to talk about apparition in the book. So I think this is maybe like the exposition to expose those mechanics, said Mrs. Weasley, heaving the large pot over to the table and starting to ladle porridge into bowls, so they can have a bit of a lie-in. Harry knew that apparating was very difficult. It meant disappearing from one place and reappearing almost instantly in another. Okay, so far that sounds like the least horrible magical method of travel. "So they're still in bed?" said Fred grumpily, pulling his bowl of porridge towards him. "Why can't we apparate too?" "Because you're not of age and you haven't got your test," snapped Mrs. Weasley. "And where have those girls got to?" She bustled out of the kitchen and they heard her climbing the stairs. "You have to pass a test to apparate?" Harry asked. "Oh, yes," said Mr. Weasley, tucking the tickets safely into the back pocket of his jeans. "The Department of Magical Transportation had to fine a couple of people the other day for apparating without a license. It's not easy, apparition, and when it's not done properly, it can lead to nasty complications. This pair I'm talking about went and splinched themselves." Everyone around the table except for Harry winced. "They, splinched?" said Harry. "They left half of themselves behind," said Mr. Weasley, now spooning large amounts of treacle onto his porridge. "So, of course, they were stuck. Couldn't move either way. Had to wait for the accidental magic reversal squad to sort them out. Meant a fair old bit of paperwork, I can tell you. What with the muggles who spotted the body parts they'd left behind." Okay, well, now this suddenly has become a much more horrid form of magical travel, hasn't it? Excuse me here for a second as I adjust the camera. There we go. And what do we got for comments? Nothing yet. Cool. All right, so I'm not a big fan of apparating. Though if you've seen Fringe, it reminds you when we're slicing people up with doorways. Harry had a sudden vision of a pair of legs and an eyeball laying abandoned on the pavement of Privet Drive. Were they okay? He asked, startled. Oh, yes, said Mr. Weasley, matter-of-factly. But they got a heavy fine, and I don't think they'll be trying it again in a hurry. You don't mess around with apparition. There are plenty of adult wizards who don't bother with it. Prefer brooms. Slower, but safer. But Bill and Charlie and Percy can all do it? Charlie had to take the test twice, said Fred, grinning. He failed first time. Apparated 5 miles south of where he meant to, right on top of some poor old dear doing her shopping. Remember? Yes. Well, he passed second time, said Mrs. Weasley, marching back into the kitchen amid hearty sniggers. Percy only passed 2 weeks ago, said George. He's been apparating downstairs every morning since, just to prove he can. There were footsteps down the passageway, and Hermione and Ginny came into the kitchen, both looking pale and drowsy. Why do we have to be up so early? Ginny asked, rubbing her eyes and sitting down at the table. We've got a bit of a walk, said Mr. Weasley. Walk, said Harry. What? Are we walking to the World Cup? No, that's miles away, said Mr. Weasley, smiling. We only need to walk a short way. It's just that it's very difficult for a large number of wizards to congregate without attracting Muggle attention. We have to be very careful about how we travel at the best of times. I think this still supports my hypothesis that it's really just a bunch of refugees hiding from Christian persecution, the original pagan occupants. We have to be very careful about how we travel at the best of times. And on a huge occasion like the Quidditch World Cup. Let's check messages. I saw one come in. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's how Nina lost her arm, right? George, said Mrs. Weasley sharply, and they all jumped. What? Said George, in an innocent tone that deceived nobody. What is that in your pocket? Nothing. Don't you lie to me. Mrs. Weasley pointed her wand at George's pocket and said, Accio. It's another one I hear all the time from Hogwarts Legacy. Several small, brightly colored objects zoomed out of George's pocket. He made a grab for them but missed, and they sped right into Mrs. Weasley's outstretched hand. We told you to destroy them, said Mrs. Weasley furiously, holding up what were unmistakably more tongue toffees. We told you to get rid of the lot. Empty your pockets. Go on, both of you. It was an unpleasant scene. The twins had evidently been trying to smuggle as many toffees out of the house as possible, and it was only by using her summoning charm that Mrs. Weasley managed to find them all. Accio! 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 She shouted, and toffees zoomed from all sorts of unlikely places, including the lining of George's jacket and the turnips of Fred's jeans. We spent 6 months developing those, Fred shouted at his mother as she threw the toffees away. Oh, a fine way to spend 6 months, she shrieked. No wonder you didn't get more owls. All in all, the atmosphere was not very friendly as they made their departure. Mrs. Weasley was still glowering as she kissed Mr. Weasley on the cheek, though not nearly as much as the twins, who had each hoisted their rucksacks onto their backs and walked out without a word to her. Well, have a lovely time, said Mrs. Weasley, and behave yourselves, she called after the twins' retreating backs. But they did not look back or answer. I'll send Bill, Charlie, and Percy along around midday, Mrs. Weasley said to Mr. Weasley, as he, Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Jenny set off across the dark yard after Fred and George. It was chilly and the moon was still out. Only a dull greenish tinge along the horizon to the right showed that daybreak was drawing closer. Harry, having been thinking about thousands of wizards speeding towards the Quidditch World Cup, sped up to walk with Mr. Weasley. I really don't have much to add about that scene with Fred and George and Molly, other than, seems like typical teenage rebellion slash individuation. But, it's Fred and George. They apparently share one whole brain cell, so that's a different parenting challenge all on itself. So, how does everyone get there without all the muggles noticing? He asked. It's been a massive organizational problem, sighed Mr. Weasley. Yeah, my chair got stuck. Sorry. Come here. Microphone is not cooperating with me today. It's been a massive organizational problem, sighed Mr. Weasley. The trouble is, about 100,000 wizards turn up to the World Cup, and of course, we just haven't got a magical site big enough to accommodate them all. There are places muggles can't penetrate, but imagine trying to pack 100,000 wizards into Diagon Alley, or platform 9 3/4. So we had to find a nice, deserted moor and set up as many anti-muggle precautions as possible. The whole ministry's been working on it for months. Firstly, of course, we have to stagger the arrivals. People with cheaper tickets have to arrive 2 weeks beforehand. A limited number use muggle transport, but we can't have too many clogging up their buses and trains. Remember, wizards are coming from all over the world. All right, again, this is the way that hidden societies that are under threat tend to move people around. This is some covert stuff right here. Some apparate, of course, but we have to set up safe points for them to appear, well away from muggles. I believe there's a handy wood they're using as the apparition point. For those who don't want to apparate or can't, we use portkeys. They're objects that are used to transport wizards from one spot to another at a prearranged time. You can do large groups at a time if you need to. There have been 200 portkeys placed at strategic points around Britain, and the nearest one to us is up the top of Stoatshead Hill, so that's where we're headed. Mr. Weasley pointed ahead of them. Lost my coffee. Mr. Weasley pointed ahead of them where a large black mass rose beyond the village of Ottery St. Catchpole. What sort of objects are portkeys? Said Harry curiously. Well, they can be anything, said Mr. Weasley. Unobtrusive things, obviously. Some muggles don't go picking them up and playing with them. Stuff they'll think is just litter. Let's check messages. So what about when they're Gred and Fjord? Because that happens every now and then. There we are. Litter. They trudged down the dark, dank lane towards the village, the silence broken only by their footsteps. The sky lightened very slowly as they made their way through the village, its inky blackness diluting to deepest blue. Harry's hands and feet were freezing. Mr. Weasley kept checking his watch. They didn't have breath to spare for talking as they began to climb Stoatshead Hill, stumbling occasionally in hidden rabbit holes, slipping on thick black tuffets of grass. Each breath Harry took was sharp in his chest and his legs. Pardon me as we move across the page, but not that far. starting to seize up when he found starting to seize up when at last his feet found level ground. Whew, panted Mr. Weasley, taking off his glasses and wiping them on his sweater. Well, we've made good time. We've got 10 minutes. Hermione came over the hill last, clutching a stitch in her side. Now we just need the Portkey, said Mr. Weasley, replacing his glasses and squinting around at the ground. It won't be big. Come on. They spread out, searching. They had only been at it for a couple of minutes, however, when a shout rent the still air. Over here, Arthur! Over here, son! We've got it! Two tall figures were silhouetted against the starry sky on the other side of the hilltop. Amos, said Mr. Weasley, smiling as he strode over to the man who had shouted. The rest of them followed. Mr. Weasley was shaking hands with a ruddy-faced wizard with a scrubby, brown beard who was holding a moldy-looking old boot in his other hand. Well, that's a pretty safe Portkey. I don't think anybody's going to want to take that thing. Let's check the comments. Okay, that camera work is dizzying. Let's see if I can turn that off. Sorry. This is Amos Diggory, everyone, said Mr. Weasley. Works for the Department of the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, and I think you know his son, Cedric. And I didn't even react to your comment. I'm sorry. Yeah, Cred and Fjord. They know who they are. Cedric Diggory was an extremely handsome boy of around 17. He was captain and seeker of the Hufflepuff House Quidditch team at Hogwarts. Hi, said Cedric, looking around at them all. Everybody said hi back except Fred and George, who merely nodded. They had never quite forgiven Cedric for beating their team. Gryffindor, oh, that was not a period, that was a comma, had never quite forgiven Cedric for beating their team, Gryffindor, in the first Quidditch match of the previous year. Long walk, Arthur? Cedric's father asked. Not too bad, said Mr. Weasley. We live just on the other side of the village there. You? Had to get up at 2, didn't we, Ced? I tell you, I'll be glad when he's got his apparition test. Still, not complaining. Quidditch World Cup. Wouldn't miss it for a sackful of galleons. And the ticket costs about that. Mind you, looks like I got off easy. Amos Diggory peered good-naturedly around at the 3 Weasley boys, Harry, Hermione, and Ginny. All these yours, Arthur? Oh, no, only the redheads, said Mr. Weasley, pointing out his children. This is Hermione, friend of Ron's, and Harry, another friend. Merlin's beard, said Amos Diggory, his eyes widening. Harry? Harry Potter? Oh, that just takes you right back to book 1, doesn't it? What was Diagon Alley? Chapter 5, Chapter 6? Yeah, said Harry. Harry was used to people looking curiously at him when they met him. Used to the way their eyes moved at once to the lightning scar on his forehead, but it always made him feel uncomfortable. Seed's talked about you, you know, said Amos Diggory. Told us all about playing against you last year. I said to him, Seed, that'll be something to tell your grandchildren. That will. You beat Harry Potter. All right, let's check comments. Well, we're one off, but this book does have a lot more chapters. Don't know if it means anything. Harry couldn't think of any reply to this, so he remained silent. Fred and George were both scowling again. Cedric looked slightly embarrassed. Harry fell off his broom, Dad, he muttered. I told you. It was an accident. Yes, but you didn't fall off, did you? Roared Amos genially, slapping his son on his back. Always modest, our Seed. Always the gentleman. But the best man won. I'm sure Harry'd say the same, wouldn't you, eh? One falls off his broom, one stays on. You don't need to be a genius to tell which one's the better flyer. This dude's got a gladiatorial attitude, man. He's ready for the Roman Colosseum. Thumbs up, thumbs down for this guy. Oof. Must be nearly time, said Mr. Weasley quickly, pulling out his watch again. Do you know whether we're waiting for any more, Amos? No. The Lovegoods have been there for a week already, and the Fawcett's couldn't get tickets, said Mr. Diggory. There aren't any more of us in the area, are there? Yes, finally get to meet Book Luna soon. Looking forward to that. Not that I know of, said Mr. Weasley. Yes, it's a minute off. We'd better get ready. He looked around at Harry and Hermione. You just need to touch the portkey, that's all. A finger will do. With difficulty, owing to the bulky backpacks, the 9 of them crowded around the old boot held out by Amos Diggory. All right. And here's another method of magical travel that doesn't sound fun at all. You have to go tramping through the wilds and find a moldy boot and all crammed to touch it at the same time. This is not convenient or fun. They all stood there in a tight circle as a chill breeze swept over the hilltop. Nobody spoke. It suddenly occurred to Harry how odd this would look if a muggle were to walk up here now. 9 people, 2 grown men, clutching this manky old boot in the semi-darkness waiting. 3, muttered Mr. Weasley, one eye still on his watch. 2, 1. It happened immediately. Harry felt as though a hook just behind his navel had been suddenly jerked irresistibly forwards. That's not fun. His feet had left the ground. He could feel Ron and Hermione on either side of him, their shoulders banging into his. That's not fun either. They were all speeding forwards in a howl of wind and swirling color. His forefinger was stuck to the boot as though it was pulling him magnetically onwards, and then his feet slammed into the ground. Ron staggered into him, and he fell over. The portkey hit the ground near his head with a heavy thud. Harry looked up. Mr. Weasley, Mr. Diggory, and Cedric were still standing, though looking very windswept. Everyone else was on the ground. 7 past 5 from Stoat's Head Hill, said a voice. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 6. So we'll check comments. I'll end this live, go get another cup of coffee, and we'll start at the next stream in about 7 minutes. And what do we got? Yeah, but I think magic travel, I don't think I have a great theory on this, but cost is definitely part of it. But magic travel, for as much as they're not using muggle stuff or they can't use muggle stuff or whatever the reasoning for that is, it's always worse than muggle travel. I would rather fly or take a taxi or get on an escalator or an elevator than any of the wizard travel methods. It's all horrid. All right. Well, hopefully I see everybody in about 7 minutes. I'm going to end this live stream and we'll pick up the next one. See y'all soon.